what is up, my tricksters? It's your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh! Superhero back again. We're going to be talking about Cross-Out Designator and how Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter has been freaking out right now.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
The Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter right now is the Cross-Out Freakout right now. And I've been seeing a number of other Yu-Gi-Tubers talking about it, and some people have had some very choice words about side cards that are against this. And we're going to kind of talk about that here in a little bit. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys, if you want to support the channel, you should check out my description at the top. There will be a link to your playmats where you can get custom sleeves with any kind of artwork that you want. They also do mats. So, and you can get their high quality stuff, man. You should check it out, or you should use code BEN10YP. Get yourself some really awesome custom sleeves or mats, and you know you're going to be supporting the channel, which you know is going to help me keep doing what I want to do and take this channel to new heights. So, you know, I'd appreciate it if you check that out. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. So, Cross-Out Designator. Let's go ahead and read it out loud. Just in case some people haven't been paying attention. I know that some people don't really pay attention to newer cards until they get here. So, declare one card name, that's the cost. Banish one card with that name from your deck, and if you do, until the end of this turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with the same original name. You can only activate one Cross-Out Designator per turn. So, automatically, this card, I really don't think people need to be freaking out about this. Automatically, I see this has a few holes in its armor. Whereas, I honestly think Called by the Grave might be a better card overall. But, bear with me. Cross-Out Designator, for one, its cost is declaring a name, which is going to be relevant for countering it later. Which we're going to be talking about that in a minute. And then, of course, you have to banish a copy of the card, so it means you have to be playing it. So that's kind of a hole in the armor there, and it's a hard once per turn. So you only get to use it once. It's like Ash Blossom, like that. So they don't get to stack. So I think that's going to be. I think it has a few chinks in the armor. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about the cards that are likely this card is going to be most viable against. The first thing that's going to be viable for is going to be viable for staple cards. Things like Nibiru, Ash Blossom, Pot of Extravagance, Pot of Disparity, Droplets, Impermanence. A lot of decks play these cards. This card is going to be primarily used by competitive players to combat competitive staples. That is the point of this card. I know people are going to say it's mostly used for hand traps, which is true, but you have to be playing the same hand trap. Now, there are a lot of hand traps that are staples, but there are a few hand traps in the game that are very deck specific or not all that popular. Something like DD Crow or Skullmeister, for example, may not be something that this card will be used against primarily. All right. The other thing that I want to talk about is one of the other things that this card's primarily going to be used for is mirror matches. So if I'm playing Thunder Dragons and you're playing Thunder Dragons, Cross-Out Designator is going to be a pretty powerful card, because you know, you're going to be able to use it, like if you're going first, you're going to be able to use it to make sure that I don't get to keep my plays going. It's also going to add to, you know, for example, Thunder cards that get banished and all that stuff, you know, that for future plays, but that's neither here nor there. The point that I'm getting at here in this particular video is this card is going to be really good for mirror matches. So it's going to help you. Basically what's going to end up happening is if you're in a competitive level event and you're playing Cross-Out Designator and you're in the mirror match, it's going to be a race to who's going to get to theirs first. And that's the player that's probably going to win the whole damn game. I know that sucks, but that's only in the case of mirror matches. The other thing that's going to be popular with this card is sideboard cards. Basically, if I was playing like let's say an example of this card would be like I am playing Sky Striker, right? And my opponent is playing an Altergeist deck or Dark Magician or, you know, Pendulum Magician or something. And one of the cards that they're going to side against me is Sacred Village. Well, I can have Sacred Village in my sideboard, banish my Sacred Village before they get to use theirs, and then there you go. Just, that may not be an exactly apples to apples example, but that's what I'm getting at. The next thing that I want to talk about that with this card is those are its three primary purposes. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is, well, how are you going to combat this card? Well, for one, the first thing you're going to want to think about is maybe your deck choice, because your deck choice will also depend on how viable this card is against you. This might be the deciding factor for some people between playing a meta deck or a rogue deck. Rogue decks are not going to be as susceptible to this, especially if they're not relying on high tier staples. Certain decks out there, for example, have the ability to play cards that are similar to Infinite Impermanence, but only for their specific archetype. Things like Phantasm Spiral, Harpies, or Marincess come to my mind when I think about that, because they kind of have their own archetype Imperm, so they don't have to play Imperm. As an example. So that's going to be one thing that's going to be coming to mind when you're up against this card. The next one that's going to come up to my mind is, what are your side options? Well, this card's also going to be very expensive. I don't imagine a lot of budget players are going to have access to this card unless they just got lucky and pulled it from Megatins. That's like the only thing I can think of. But that being said, we're going to also talk about some of the cards that you can side against. Now, something that's been very popularized thanks to Crush Cards. If you don't know who they are, you can find them real easy. They mentioned Engraver of the Mark. This card actually is going to be really useful against Nobleman Crossout. And the reason why this card is going to be essentially very useful is because basically when your opponent goes to negate one of your cards, it actually is going to get better games 2 and 3, because then you can call their best cards, like the cards that are actually going to stop you or keep you from playing instead, basically. So if you Engraver in the Mark and they call your I don't know, you could potentially get rid of one of their starter cards. Like if they're playing heroes, you could make them banish to Stratos, for example, or Dinos, you could get them to get rid of their one Misk or whatever. It's by making them change the name as an example of something that they could do. You could make them get rid of a one of in their deck that they have. So that's just one of the really cool things that you could do with this. The other thing that's going to end this card in particular, and the reason why it's interesting that Crush Cards mentioned it, is because they're very known for playing zombies, which is why you're going to want this card if you're playing a deck that banishes a lot like zombies, like Grand Maju's, like Grand Maju decks and its variants, or Thunder Dragons, because basically this card is going to it's not going to stop anyone from banishing anything. It's just going to be changing the names and targets around, which is very useful, as well as it's a dark target, which is very useful because a lot of these decks also play like chaos or pseudo chaos engines. So there you go, you'll have that advantage there. The other thing that I want to bring up while we're talking about it is the card that's probably going to be more primarily used as your out to Crossout Designator for most decks, and that's going to be Artifact Lancia. This card already sees play in a variety of things for a variety of cards. This card is one of the outs to Called by the Grave. So there are going to be more cards that will be discussed as this goes and continues, obviously. I wouldn't even be shocked if you start seeing people say, oh, top 10 cards that are good against, Nobleman Crossout. Artifact Lancia is going to be a primary example. And the reason why I bring up these two cards in particular, Engraver and Lancia, is because they are budget options. They both have common prints that you can get really cheap. So, and that's just the thing that I want to get at. Because most of the player base isn't going to be able to afford a playset of Designator, but they are going to be able to get a playset of Engraver or Lancia. So just get whatever works best for you, whatever you can afford. And I hope this helps. Maybe, this card, I don't think there's a reason to really panic. I also, like I said, especially if you're a rogue player, you're going to have less targets in your deck for a Crossout Designator than a meta player is going to, because the meta players are playing a lot of the same outs. Like, a lot of them are playing cards like Droplets, like Lightning Storm, all these various things, whereas a lot of the rogue players are going to have to play different cards. So it's just, like I said, I don't think that anyone should panic, and I also think that everyone's talking about combo. I honestly think that you're going to see Crossout Designator making way more appearances in back row based decks like Altergeist, Guru, Paleozoic, that kind of thing, as an example. There are also other, more back row based decks that are out there, and I think that are more on the way. If I recall correctly, somebody's talking about new cards that are coming from the OCG soon. I'm pretty sure there's another back row deck that's on its way. So this card is going to be very much, I think it's going to be helping more of the control players than the combo players, if you want me to be brutally honest. But that's all I've got today. I want to just remind you guys not to freak out, okay? This card is good, but it is not godly, okay? It is not without its weaknesses. And if you are prepared and you're educated and you pay attention to your opponent's decks, if you're playing if you're playing Engraver of the Mark, you can get rid of key combo starters for them, or various place starters, etc. Like for example, you could force your opponent who's playing Ultrageist to get rid of their Multi-Faker, or force Guru to get rid of their Guru, etc. You know what I mean? So just it's just things to think about. These cards are gonna be your two primary outs, and maybe think about the decks that you want to play. Like I said, not everybody is going to be playing these very high level decks, and rogue players, this might be the answer for you to help you out them. But real quick, we'll go over what Crossout Designator is going to be for. It's going to be for mirror matches. It's going to be for high played staples, and it's going to be for played as a out to the cards that out you. So for example, if you're playing Crossout Designator, you might want to use it on Artifact Lancia, as an example. If you're playing like Thunder Dragons, you might put in an Artifact Lancia in your sideboard so you can banish it off of this and negate an opponent's Artifact Lancia. Just as an example. I hope that helps. I hope this maybe encourage you guys not to have the the Crossout freak out that I've been seeing on Twitter. And guys, I'm Bitch, that was YGO. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you like the video, leave me one of these. And guys, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.